All right, everybody. I've got another very special guest for everyone today. I want you all to welcome to the show, Mr. Ben Lacy. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you today?
Pretty good, thank you.
So, Ben, newcomer to the show, so we got to put you through the gauntlet. Everyone's favorite question: what's your origin story? What got you into comics, and then what point were you like, "Hey, I think I could create some of these things"?
I've been reading comics since the '70s, probably. So aging myself for a long time. I've always enjoyed them. I've always wanted to write them. Of course, I couldn't draw at all, and I didn't know any artists. And for a while, I was writing, fiction and short stories and trying to write novels. And then I was like, oh, why don't I try and write a comic book? Because I had an idea that I thought fit better as a comic book than anything else. But I didn't know how to draw, so I spent about a year learning enough digital artwork so that I could create my vision of my comic book, which was Shark of War. And now that I put out 5 issues of that, I'm now moving into actually working with other artists and stuff, and not just doing all the artwork myself for my spin-off series, the Cthulhu Man.
So you one day were just like, I'm going to draw this, and you sat down and taught yourself for a year how to draw?
Well, I'd seen a lot of digital modeling software and like DAZ 3D and software like Clip Studio, Paint, and I'm not on hand by hand. I couldn't draw anything, but I started to realize that I could use these tools because I'm an engineer by background. I do a lot of computer work, stuff like that. I could use these tools and I could do it that way. So even though I don't know how, classically not trained to draw, and on paper I wouldn't do a very good drawing, with these computer tools I could make my vision.
And then that's pretty awesome. You don't hear a lot of people going and just saying, screw it, let's see if I can do it on my own.
Yeah, one of the things in my first issue of Shark of War, in the digital version, there's a feature in the back explaining how I do all the artwork and everything else, and kind of laying it out there for anybody who's interested in that. Of course, that's a freebie on my site for anybody who signs up.
So actually, let's start there, because even though Cthulhu Man's the first thing that popped my eye towards you, going back, I was like, I don't know how I didn't hear about the Shark of War thing, because it sounds like a really dope concept. So what's Shark of War, and how did that funding for that go for you over the many Kickstarters?
Shark of War is basically, I'd seen the movie The Meg had come out a few years ago, and I saw that, and there was a lot of other movies on sci-fi with sharks in them. And they all had one thing in common. The shark was some kind of monster that went out and killed people, and then eventually had to be killed by the heroes at the end. And I was like, what if I spun that around and the shark were actually the hero of the story? So that's kind of how Shark of War, first, the genesis of the story idea came out. But I knew that, a book or a story of that would not work nearly as well as a comic book where you see the shark in action. So that's kind of how I wound up doing Shark of War. And I heard about Kickstarter as a way to help fund it. And, I've done now 5 issues. Each issue has made its funding goal. The last issue, had my largest funding goal, made the most money of all of them. So I've slowly grown my audience, not in leaps and bounds like I'd like, but a lot of people stuck with it. And then, some new people have come on board.
I always, for what we do over here, I always kind of prefer the slow growth. I mean, the leaps and bounds would be nice. If I could get 1 million people listening to the show overnight, I'd be happy. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But the slow growth is nice because they tend to stick around a little bit more for the next thing and the next thing. So yeah, I went back and I was looking at it, and that initial image, like, was there ever an image in your head that was like, this is going to be a really cool concept? Because I think when I see that image of the shark flying through the air with the laser on the back of his back, I was like, there's no way this isn't the coolest thing ever.
When one of the first images I did is like on page 2. I knew people I had to get in the action right away. I have the shark biting a drug smuggler in half, basically, and I was like, this is kind of cool. And at all cons and everything else, I have that page, the comic book, open to that page for two reasons. First, to show cool action. But also, if any parents come up, I want them to see, this is the level of violence in the book. You're going to see the shark biting people in half. It's not gory and graphic necessarily, but it's got shark killing people action in it. So that somebody didn't buy it for their 4-year-old and then comes back and said, "Oh, I thought this would be a cute shark book," and it's not.
Not an all ages title like Super Dinosaur.
No, I think it. Anybody in their early teens would be fine. Well, nowadays with kids, it's probably any 10-year-old seen more stuff than that. But
so eventually, you're really successful with the Shark of War. You get all the issues out and you move on to the next series, and that's what you're working on right now. So I guess we'll jump right into it. Before I get too far in, what is Cthulhu Man? And what's the premise of this book?
Well, Cthulhu Man, I haven't finished. I'm still going to do Shark of War, but I basically, it's a spin-off from Shark of War. One of the people who helped create the Shark of War, she's basically become she's a mad scientist type, and she's basically decided she wants to continue taking this even further. So she started with working on sharks, and now she wants to work on people and do stuff to people. And since she's now she's got a lot of funding from criminal cartels who are using her creations to help them in their criminal endeavors. She has plenty of money, and she has these underworld connections who are willing to provide her with human victims, because they have people they want to die painfully, so they're perfectly happy to hand over people to her so she can experiment on them and create monsters. So Cthulhu Man basically is one of those creations. She merges a human with the brains of an octopus who has multiple brains, and that basically gives this person special powers that start to resemble the classical powers that we think of Cthulhu having. The ability to control minds, instill great fear, make people see what he wants them to see. And of course, this goes south for her when he escapes, and that kind of is where the story is going. He's not the only person she's done this to. There are other characters as well, some of whom may become the first superheroes of my comic book universe.
Yeah, so that's cool. I didn't realize you were taking Shark of War and creating a whole universe around it. So that's kind of your new universe you're creating for yourself, your little corner slice of life.
I'm not going to be locked into pure and don't have to have everything in continuity for my projects. But yeah, for this I thought a logical spin-off would be this woman has done these kind of unethical, illegal experiments, and now what's the next level she would go to? And this is kind of where she takes it. So she starts creating these people. So that's one area. There's another spin-off I'm trying to work on as well from Shark of War, and there's going to be a Shark of War 6. So that's going to come out hopefully early next year. Starts the next story arc in the adventures of the Shark of War.
So is this just a one and done one shot, or do you see this being its own series as well?
It's set up to be a one and done, but there's certainly a possibility of continuation. There's a bit of an open-ended kind of ending, but it is a clear kind of ending for So I'm not saying I'm going to continue it. I think some of the spin-off characters I'm creating in it will probably pop up again if I continue to expand the universe. But and of course the villainess who's driving this, she's a regular in Shark of War right now. This is his main nemesis.
So immediately upon finding the Kickstarter, I mean, with this is the truth with most Kickstarters and most comics, to be fair, but the art stands out. So, where'd you come, or where'd you meet up with your artists, and what's the relationship been there?
Most of the artists I found through Facebook, different art groups where people are like seeking commissions. So so I want to, I worked with him actually on an anthology submission story, which was a little bit of a prequel to this, more humorous story for an anthology that I used him for. I thought that went well, so now I engaged him to do the artwork for this. It was a little, originally he was going to do everything, the pencils, inks, and colors, but he was falling behind. So I brought in another artist, a Ukrainian person, to do the coloring. And I met this artist because he posted about, during the war, he was asking for some work because of the invasion, and he needed money. And so I hired him as to do a pinup for me of the Shark of War eating Vladimir Putin. And I gave that out as a bonus in my last Kickstarter. Everybody who backed at a physical level got a print of his drawing of the Shark of War eating Vladimir Putin. So came time to have a colorist. That was what he mainly did, was coloring. I decided to use him again.
I'm sure that artist was more than happy to make that piece for you.
Yeah. So I wanted something that tied in with the current situation and fit his situation too, and how we met. And I think a lot of people got a kick out of that print. In fact, I think he got another job. Some other creator hired him to have his hero beating up Putin or something like that too, after they saw what I'd done.
Well, that's one Ukrainian who's having a good time fantasizing about some things, but that's awesome to hear. The colorists, honestly, the colors really pop for me too, because with the character you created here, with the world that's being built here, obviously, most people's minds will go to something like Man Thing or Swamp Thing. That's definitely kind of the vibe that I get from it. Was that an inspiration in all of this, those characters?
Not really. This character's, the Man Thing isn't really, my memory of the Man Thing is that he's not very intelligent. Where Swamp Thing, I always thought is very, the most famous iterations of Swamp Thing, Alan Moore's work on it was very highbrow kind of thing, and very meant to be very literary, where this is supposed to be a fun combination of horror and with some superheroics in merged in with it. So I wouldn't say it was very much inspired by those. It was more, I'd see it started. I wasn't following Lovecraft very well until I got into Kickstarter, and I saw there's a lot of interest in Lovecraft, and so I started learning more about it and hearing more about it, and that was probably more my inspiration is seeing some of the work that people are doing on Kickstarter on reinterpreting or imaginings of Lovecraftian work.
Awesome. So yeah, you said so this one, once it's funded and out there, you said the next thing is to go back to Shark of War, and you're going to continue that further.
Yeah, I want to do Shark of War 6, and I have another story arc lined up for that. If that goes well, I have at least one more story arc of that, which would complete. I envision this as like 15 issues altogether if it goes through all the way to the end. Also, I want to do another spin-off. I don't know if in the first issue there's this situation where very offhandedly he rescues. He didn't really rescue. There's these women being human trafficked, and he spots them. He kills the person who is kidnap them, but basically leaves them afloat in the middle of the ocean because he's a shark. He doesn't do Coast Guard rescues, so he's left them afloat in the middle of the ocean. And afterwards, I started thinking, it was just supposed to be a series of things he was doing to battle the criminal element. He was taking out drug smugglers and gun smugglers and human traffickers. And I started thinking, what happened to those women after he saved them or left them afloat in the middle of the ocean? So I'm planning like a Grindhouse style comic book around the what happens to these women after they've escaped this situation, as they struggle to reestablish themselves with the mob still chasing them down and wanting to capture them.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It's going to be more of a 70s style Grindhouse, kill pussycat faster, that kind of thing, or, meets the A-Team kind of thing. They're having, women in jeopardy kind of action adventure.
And that's another title where you're going to try to find a new creator or a new art team to take over the chores there.
Yeah, we've already started a little bit of the art, but it's still got a ways to go before I'm ready to start showing much of it around. But I'm hoping to get moving on that fairly early next year too.
So you said you've been doing a lot of growing on Kickstarter. How is, from your first campaign to now this one, what do you think is the biggest change for you in terms of running a Kickstarter? Before, I was relying, a lot of the backers were, friends, family, other creators who I'd happen to meet on Facebook. And now it's more people that I've slowly built a bit of a fandom, either, online or at conventions and things like that. And, building my email list and expanding my Facebook presence. I have a group on Facebook for Biting Comics where I post a lot and try to build as much people there looking at my posts as possible. Very cool. And for somebody, if there was somebody out there that's, thinking the same thing, they want to start their first Kickstarter, what's the one thing you wish you knew then that you know now about starting your first Kickstarter?
You have to bring a lot of your own people to it. It's not, I think earlier on in Kickstarter, you could post a project and people would see it and they back it. But now there's a lot of projects and, there's more competition. So you have to start working early to get your email list going, get your online presence there, be somebody who's, if you're an artist or somebody like that, and you're doing shows or something, make sure anybody who buys your print signs up for your email list. Make sure, you build that fandom, because those are the people that you're most likely to back your Kickstarter.
Very cool. So the book's currently running on Kickstarter. Ben, if people want to follow you further, where's the best place to send them?
If they want to go to try out issue 1 of Shark of War and read the preview issue of Cthulhu Man, which is like the first 8 pages plus a bunch of bonus art, just go to bitingcomics.com. If they want to check out the Kickstarter, just go to cm.bitingcomics.com, and that'll take them directly to the Kickstarter page. That's running for about 12 more days. So I'm 70+% funded, so I'm hoping to make it, get funded very soon, and maybe get I got a couple of good bonus stretch goals planned if we break that.
And do you have any preferred social media that people can follow you at?
Probably on Facebook. I'm at Facebook on Shark of War, and I'm Lacy1 on Twitter.
All right, so everybody out there, I will have the links down below to both Biting Comics website and the Kickstarter, so you can check those out there. Make sure to follow Ben on social media platform of your choice. So Ben, thanks so much for stopping by. Appreciate your time. No problem.
Thank you.
And I look forward to getting the book in my hands.
Oh, great. I'm glad to hear it.